Failing interviews is so important. That's my excuse for doing it all the time. Seriously though, the only way you'll be able to get a great job is if you fail the opportunity to get a bunch first. I know engineers who have failed hundreds of interviews before getting their first gig. Although I haven't failed as many interviews as most engineers, I still think my experiences are embarrassing enough to be worth sharing and might help some engineers who are in a similar place currently scared. So let's talk about all the interviews I failed. The first interview I failed was Best Buy. Yes, like Geek Squad. I loved playing with computers and like opening them up, rebuilding them, and doing all sorts of stuff with the hardware that I got my hands on. I'd been the family tech for a while and quickly became the neighborhood and the high school tech as well. Funny enough, I think I was too judgy about Apple products and the possibility of having to work on Macs that they didn't call me back after the first interview, which sucks because I was a kid and I was really excited to work there. I ended up at Staples working at Easy Tech, funny enough, because Staples didn't sell any Apple products at the time, which for a 16-year-old super Apple hater Theo was really convenient. We don't need to talk about all the Apple stuff I own now. After my high school jobs, I went to college. And in college, I had to get an internship. Man, oh man, did I have the interview experience of a lifetime with Amazon. I went to RPI, and Amazon had a lot of presence at RPI during the career fair and such. So rather than doing a traditional interview where they would interview each person individually, they would take 40 engineers into a lecture hall, had an Amazon employee come in, plug their laptop in, give a presentation on how they were going to do an interview, and then set you all up to do an online interview on your laptop, all automated, in the lecture hall, almost like a class or a test you would take in school. I hated this so much. The person who was sent didn't have any of the files she needed on her laptop. Because she needed internet access and she hadn't got it provisioned from the school, I actually offered my Wi-Fi credentials to get her signed in so she could download all her files. Sadly, despite getting access to the internet, she didn't know how her email worked, how PowerPoint worked, how the links worked for the actual assessment, or really how to get the thing started at all. So after sitting there working with her for about an hour, when the whole thing was supposed to take 2 hours, I walked up, said, "Hey, I think I know how to fix this," signed out of my Wi-Fi credentials, and left. I then sent an email to my friend at Amazon who had referred me about how miserable this was. He forwarded it to the right people, and I ended up getting brought in for a phone interview, almost like as an apology for how chaotic that was. And I got the internship. I bombed that internship, but that's a story for another day. I was the only person in my group who didn't get an invite back. It was a rough summer. After I bombed that internship, I went back to school with my only achievement from my internship being a Chrome extension that started going viral. And that Chrome extension made it so you didn't have to use Bing on Windows 10. Because of the popularity of Chrome-Tana, Microsoft extended an invite for an interview. Microsoft flew me out to Redmond. I had formally requested a laptop so I didn't have to whiteboard. First interviewer didn't bring me one, but the second one did. Sadly, the laptop was a MacBook using the guest profile, signed into an awful browser app for coding because I didn't have anything installed that I could use. And it was so laggy and miserable, it was worse than even my penmanship, as bad as it is. Because of how bad the laptop experience was, I just went with whiteboarding for the rest of the interview, but at that point, I was pretty broken. On top of that, I don't know how much this was a real interview versus how much this was the Bing team gauging my threat level. As such, I flew back with pretty low expectations, and sure as hell, a week later got an email letting me know I was rejected. Thankfully, I had already started interviewing at Amazon and managed to get my job there. In the interim there, I interviewed at a few banks and other companies. I stopped the interview processes or failed them before getting far enough in to be notable. None of that holds much space in my memory anymore. It was so long ago, but I definitely bombed a bunch of other interviews in that time. The interview at Twitch was interesting because I kind of failed that too, even though I did get the job in the end. It was another instance of requesting to use a laptop and not getting a laptop, so I had a lot of whiteboarding to do. I didn't do a great job. The first interviewer was supposed to be technical, but it ended up just being a calm, fun chat. We talked a bunch about music, Daft Punk. Love you, Bill. Thank you again. After that, I did some technical interviews. The first one was an algorithm problem. It was some weird one about wires matching that I struggled with. The next problem, I was asked some infra deployment stuff that I didn't know anything about, so I bombed. They then sent in a front-end person, assuming that if I bombed the back-end question so hard that I must be a front-end engineer, and I just didn't even know where to start with the problem. If I recall, the problem was around sticky scroll, like scrolling through chat and having it not auto-scroll you down until you click a button, which is funny because I then ended up helping re-implement that later on. Regardless, I bombed because I was not a front-end engineer yet. Even though I bombed pretty much all of the technical parts of the interview, the team was excited enough about me to bring me in with some combination of the success of Chrome Tana and how excited I was about non-gaming content. And this was the non-gaming team. Because of their excitement, they wanted to bring me in, but because I bombed the interview, they couldn't. So they gave me a 3-month contract to hire offer where I would join the team for 3 months, see how I did, and if I did well, I would get a full-time. And even after those 3 months, I was still struggling, so they renewed the contract another 3 months. After that 6-month window, though, I had finally proven myself enough for the full-time job. And after spending about 5 years at Twitch, I realized how much it was affecting my growth opportunities, and I decided to start looking elsewhere. Most of the companies I talked to got me offers quick enough that I realized I was underselling myself. I wasn't just a mid-level engineer or even a senior engineer. It was clear I was capable and ready to take on principal and CTO type positions. That said, I do have one interview I want to talk about though, the only one I failed post-Twitch. That interview is my interview with Linear. Feel bad airing this out, but I was really disappointed with my Linear interview. I got to speak with Jory directly, and I was so excited to speak with him. I had watched a bunch of his talks. He was one of the strongest names in performant React code on how to build state machines and systems within React applications that allowed them to move really fast and provide good experiences for users. And I was genuinely really excited to work with him and to have a React expert like him around to learn from. As y'all know, I love working with experts and talking to all the awesome people in the ecosystem and learning everything I can from them. Sadly, he interpreted my excitement for that as a need for mentorship. My rejection from this interview specifically stated they were looking for someone who could own and drive projects themselves, not someone who needed a lot of mentorship. This was in 2021. I like to think a year and a half ago, I wasn't that much worse a developer than I am now. And I also like to think I know how to build applications by myself. So that was super disappointing. And I'm genuinely disappointed in Linear for taking my excitement to work with such a talented team and flipping it on me as a need for mentorship. The reason I bring this up isn't to shame Linear. It's to point out something important. You will fail interviews for reasons way outside of your control, many of which make no sense at all. The vast majority of interviews result in failure. If they didn't, there would be no positions available. You need to know that going in, and it's important to recognize that those failures are not always yours, but when they are, learn from them so you can adjust and improve your process. You should learn something in every interview, either about yourself and what will make you stronger in future interviews, or about the company and whether or not you would be a good fit there, as well as their process and what did and didn't work for it. Giving feedback on interview processes can be very valuable as well. Generally speaking, people are too scared of interviews, and you need to go in and you need to be willing to fail, because failing a bunch of interviews is one of the best ways to figure out where you are as an engineer and what you need to do to grow and succeed. So if you take anything from this video, it should be go and fail more interviews. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if it was or wasn't. Subscribe to the channel regardless, because we're so close to 100K. We might even be over it by the time this comes out. So thank you as always. YouTube seems to think you're going to like whatever video it's showing here. I haven't watched that one in a while, but if I recall, it was really good. So give that a shot. Thank you as always. Peace, nerds.